please raise your hand. Carolyn, I don't see anybody that would like to speak to this agenda item for public comment. Do you?
Yeah, I see Alejandra Castaneda.
Okay.
Hold on, I think I have to allow to talk.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you. I'm not sure which item we're referring to. I wanted to speak to the Sheridan Corridor Safety Study.
Yeah, go ahead, Alexander. Go ahead and you have the floor.
Okay. Can I speak about the Sheridan Corridor Safety
Sure.
Study?
Sure.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Alejandra Castañeda. I'm a pedestrian dignity advocate, and I live in Northwest Denver. I was also a member of the Civic Advisory Committee for the recently completed Sheridan Corridor Safety Study led by DRCOG. I am speaking today because community members in Northwest Denver and Edgewater just last week learned that a crucial section of the corridor that was left out of the study, the DRCOG study, because it was supposed to be part of the Sheridan Corridor multimodal plan, which is led by Edgewater and other entities, has been degraded to prioritize traffic flow instead of safety, multimodal safety. The area between West 17th Avenue and 26th Avenue in Northwest Denver was identified years ago as a high injury crash network of concern and awarded a community mobility planning and implementation grant. The Sheridan Boulevard Multimodal Corridor Plan was developed by the City of Edgewater in partnership with the City and County of Denver, Regional Transportation District, and the Colorado Department of Transportation. The last-minute changes to a finalized plan presented to community members go against the safety multimodal goals of the Sheridan Corridor Safety Study, and I beg you all to learn more and demand that people and safety be prioritized, especially the most vulnerable, at an intersection West 17 where Robert was killed last year when trying to cross the street, in any regional transportation plans and implementations. Thank you for this opportunity to speak and for the work that you do.
Thank you very much and have a really good day. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay. Carolyn, do you have anybody else that would like to speak?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, if I may, just chat with Carolyn here for a second. Carolyn, if you can make me a co-host, I can help you bring people in. I know Director Johnson is out there looking to get in.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. All right, we'll move on to agenda number 3, February 17th, 2026 is our Regional Transportation Committee meeting summary. Are there any changes or comments from the members? All right, seeing none, I'm assuming that we'll move on to our action item for this morning. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving, happy Patrick's Day. Getting held of myself. It's going to be our 2026-2029 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. And is Josh in this room?
No, ma'am. It'll be Todd Cottrell.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Take it away. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you, Chair. So this morning, we only have one proposed amendment for your consideration. And this amendment is to add Senate Bill 230 funds, which is dedicated to the Clean Transit Enterprise, to the existing TIP project for these funds in the TIP. They have made 4 project awards for operating expenses going to Denver, Douglas County, RTD, and Via Mobility. And this totals $10,568,000. So this amendment would add those projects into the existing TIP pool project. So at this time, happy to take any comments or questions you have. Otherwise, there is a proposed motion in your packet.
Questions or comments for Todd this morning?
No question. I would move approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Is there a second?
I second Deborah Johnson.
Thank you, ma'am, very much for joining us this morning. I guess how we do this, Doug, is everybody just say aye, or we want to do a thumbs up, or or what, how would you like to do this today?
Everybody say aye. That sounds like a plan.
Okay, all right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition out
Aye.
there? All right. Your action item is moving forward there, Todd. So thank you very much for being with us, and tell Josh that he missed the boat. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
oh, you're welcome. All right, we'll move on to informational briefings or Sheridan Corridor Safety Study final report by Miss Nora Kern, our program manager for sub area and project planning. Ma'am, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Give me just a moment to see if I can share my presentation. All right. Go back to the beginning. Great. Well, thank you all for having me this morning. My name is Nora Kern. I manage the sub-area and program planning program at DRCOG, and I'm really excited to share about one of our recently completed corridor plans, which is the Sheridan Boulevard Safety Study. Excuse me. So a little bit of background. As I mentioned, this is part of our corridor planning set-aside program. So DRCOG led this effort. It was nominated for the program by both Denver and Lakewood a couple of years ago. And it's the reason it's eligible for the corridor program is because it is currently in the regional transportation plan as a priority safety project. It's also on the high injury network. Much of this corridor is on our critical corridor network. And it was a really important opportunity for DRCOG to kind of help bring a lot of different stakeholders together. It is a state road. It also borders 6 cities, and we worked with 3 different counties. So for folks familiar with Sheridan, it is an extremely complicated corridor. And so the goals of this study were really to focus in on the serious and fatal crashes and come up with some actionable and implementable steps that could be moved forward to reduce those. And then kind of essential to doing that, we also wanted to make sure we helped facilitate coordination between all the different jurisdictions so that we really could find some solutions that could move forward. So just going to go kind of high level through this study. It is finalized and now on our website if you want to dive into all the details, but I'll just kind of give you a snapshot of what the study involved and some of the recommendations. So we started in the fall, just first kind of understanding the corridor. There has been a lot of planning on this corridor, so kind of trying to bring together past planning efforts as well as some ongoing projects, technical analysis to understand the infrastructure that's out there today. And then we did start a robust community engagement kind of that ran throughout the study, but started in that fall. The summer was focused on understanding the crashes. So we did a lot of detailed crash analysis. We also had a number of different site visits to some of the highest crash locations. And then this past fall and winter, we really tried to bring everybody back together to develop some of those recommendations and go back out to the community in the fall to get input on those. So won't go into all the details of the data, but I think many people are aware of how serious the safety issue is on Sheridan Boulevard. We looked at 5 years of crash data, and there were over 4,000 crashes, 152 people who were seriously injured. Those are the life-altering injuries, and 17 people lost their lives. As Alejandra alluded to, unfortunately, since this data set was completed, additional people have died, including several during our study period itself. So I think all involved felt a lot of urgency on this project to really make some progress on some of these hotspots. Just kind of another important detail of the crash analysis. Again, we are really focused on the serious and fatal crashes, and on this corridor, the majority of fatalities are people walking, biking, and riding motorcycles, and 25% of all serious injuries are people outside of vehicles. So it is a road that most people are driving on, kind of given the infrastructure, but unfortunately, the brunt of the fatalities and those serious injuries are being borne by the people outside of vehicles. We did do, as I mentioned, a fairly detailed crash analysis. A couple key takeaways I'll highlight here. As you can see, the most common type for all crashes is rear end, followed by side swipes. But if you look at on the right side of the screen, you can see those are the types of crashes that are leading to those serious injuries and fatalities. And so that's where you see the approach turn is really popping out. Pedestrian and broadside are all overrepresented, as well as bicycle crashes. So you see a lot of rear end crashes, but most of those are actually not serious. So that's where we really wanted to focus in on those types of crashes that are resulting in the most serious outcomes. We had a very robust engagement throughout this whole process. And so this is just kind of a snapshot. We did form a civic advisory committee at the beginning of this study that really helped guide our engagement and help us think about how we could present this information to the public. But we had our website presence, had 1,000 different contributions on through the website. We also attended 24 different events, ranging from small focus groups with kind of hard to reach communities to Dragon Boat Festival, Liquid Cider Days, so kind of everything, full scales of different size events. And through those different community events, we talked to over 600 different people. Alongside kind of the public outreach we did, this was kind of how we developed our recommendations. I won't go through all the bubbles, but kind of generally, we took what we heard from the public, we took the existing conditions analysis to kind of start understanding just what's going on out on Sheridan, what are the biggest issues. Then we kind of took that and started to develop some draft recommendations that we thought might address some of those issues we were seeing. We ran those through a community engagement process as well as kind of extensive workshops with all the different partner agencies. And then that resulted in our final plan and final recommendations, which I'll share about here in a second. So we broke our recommendations into kind of two buckets. First, there are some corridor-wide recommendations that are some of the biggest, most important items that we really think could make a big difference on this corridor. So first, these are roughly in order of nearest to farthest, hardest, I guess, in timeline. But first would just be multimodal lighting. There are several stretches that have poor lighting, and a lot of the crashes are happening at night. So looking to improve that. Next, our biggest recommendation is to add a median or hardened center line, essentially on most of the corridor. There is a stretch between 17th and 26th that's currently in final design in a project led by CDOT and Edgewater that's planning to put a median in that section. So this would just be kind of completing the rest of the corridor. And that's really particularly to help with those approach turn crashes and those broadsides, as well, make it safer for people crossing the street. We're hoping that could go alongside repaving and restriping. There's a lot of pavement issues and confusing striping. A safety-oriented signal timing plan would be really critical as well. And then kind of some longer-term items, traffic and speed cameras, filling in sidewalk gaps and widening substandard sidewalks, and then bus stop consolidation. So those are just a couple others, but those are kind of the big ones, corridor-wide. We also looked at a couple of the highest crash locations to do kind of a little bit more detailed concept designs and cost estimates. Hopefully these could move forward quickly through some kind of grant opportunities. And so that was Sheridan the 14th, Sheridan and Jewel, and then that median concept I talked about. And then we also worked with Wheat Ridge to go ahead and help them with their restriping of Sheridan and 29th to improve the crossing for bikes and pedestrians at that intersection. So in addition to kind of the corridor-wide recommendations and those kind of low-hanging or the early action intersections, we also developed recommendations for 26 different intersections along the corridor. We did focus on the ones that have the highest number of serious and fatal crashes and ones where there is not an existing project that's in kind of the final design or planning phase. So 14 of those intersections we looked at actually were also they're in the southern half, and they were looked at by Denver in a 2021 road safety audit, and then we kind of updated and refreshed those recommendations. We added 10 additional intersections that were kind of in the northern section, again, those kind of high crash locations. And then 2 locations were added through community feedback and unfortunately recent crashes that I mentioned happened during the study. So for each of these intersections, we identified concurrent projects, talked about who would be the logical lead, which is a complicated decision on the corridor this complex, as well as time frame and possible funding sources. So just kind of highlight at a big picture, this was a really great opportunity for DRCOG's corridor planning program to bring together regional agencies. This is the perfect type of corridor for our program, just given how complicated it is. So that was a great opportunity. Obviously, safety is one of the highest priorities for all of us, not the highest. And so we were really glad to be able to take a little bit of a proactive role on one of the DRCOG high injury network corridors. We also helped local governments understand full crash data. Sheridan's weird. If you're traveling north and get in a crash, the data goes to Denver. If you're traveling south, it might go to Lakewood, Wheat Ridge, Mountain View, kind of depending on the responding police force. So it's a very complicated data corridor, just kind of given how weird the boundaries are. And then we also did want to identify some of those larger projects that could really help move the needle for the whole corridor. Related to those opportunities, there were some really tough challenges. One, it's a little bit of a border corridor, so it's everybody's backyard and no one's top priority, just kind of because it's that boundary line. So that's just a challenge on a corridor like this. It's also very, very narrow and has high traffic volumes, which created a lot of just really difficult trade-off conversations. One of the toughest part of that trade-off conversations is there are very limited options to address sidewalks. So we do talk through some of the ways that sidewalks could be widened, but I think that's one of the biggest issues on this corridor and one that's really still continues to be tough to tackle. And then last, it's just a long corridor, and with the number of jurisdictions, it just takes a lot of time to move these conversations forward. So a couple of key action steps. We did identify some early action projects and even just maintenance issues out along the corridor that we've shared with all the different local agencies. All the different local agencies have specific recommendations that they can add into their internal processes. And we, for example, have been helping Denver get those ready for the Denver Moves Everyone database. We are convening the group to explore applying for an SS4A or another grant for the median project. And then we're also convening the different police departments to be able to share our findings with the different kind of officers that deal directly with traffic safety. So that's just a highlight. Like I said, this project is on our website if you're interested, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Nora. Questions or comments for Nora today? All right, Dr. I'm going to mess up your last name, so I'm sorry, Brett. Go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's Pagliari, by the way, or
Thank you.
Pagliari. Either
Okay,
works.
I will remember that.
Thank you for your presentation, Nora. And thank you, Chair. I was actually able to attend one of these on-site walks, safety analysis studies from 14th to 20th. And I will note that we had to walk on the street on Sheridan because there were not contiguous sidewalks on Sheridan. And it is a very important area to me personally. But I do have some concerns over the area and some questions for you, Nora, about the area that was brought up in today's public comment. The original safety plan created by the City of Edgewater and the City of Denver and County of Denver is pretty significantly different than the plan going to construction today by CDOT and the other partners. And I worry that and believe that we may need to reevaluate the current plan for its new decrease in safety and go back and look at what that current plan is versus what that plan was originally, because I do not think that the current plan would meet the really the bar we set by the safety plan along the whole area of Sheridan. It leaves like the new plan that was recently presented to the City of Edgewater leaves out some of the significant improvements for pedestrian accessibility, including 2 crosswalks and really 2 protected bike lanes at the intersections of 17th and 20th. And so I'm going to call out the intersection at 20th. In the site-specific recommendations that you presented in this study, you called out that there was a conflicting pedestrian timing, and one of the identifications was to add pedestrian-led interval timing on that intersection. Sorry for the longer comment. I'm wondering, do you know the date when Denver is planning, because they control that intersection, to retime along Sheridan to get the recommendations? It's an easy win. We just have to retime it to allow pedestrians to cross at a safer time. I'm wondering if you could give me a date on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the comment. So this section between 17th and 26th, there is a concurrent project that you alluded to, but just for background, that is being led by CDOT and Edgewater. So we actually mostly did not have any recommendations in that section because that project is in 90% design, and I think it's planned to go to construction next year. So I know they have had some, like all projects, some budget issues and have been kind of working on kind of some adjustments. I'm actually not super up to date on what those changes are, so I can't really speak to those, but happy to kind of get folks in touch with the CDOT or Edgewater staff that are in charge of that project. So unfortunately, I'm not super up to date on that project and able to speak to that. In terms of the signal timing, I think what we would be recommending is kind of a corridor-wide signal timing as opposed to intersection by intersection, just because they're all so related. And so Denver would most likely be the lead on that. And my understanding is it would probably be a couple of years out, which in planning term is relatively soon, but probably within the next 5 years. I think by 2030 is what they were hoping.
Thank you. I have concerns that the intersection where the pedestrian was killed at 17th and Sheridan, one of the things that the after crash analysis determined was that changing the timings could prevent another death immediately in the short term. And I think waiting 2 years is just too long, given that there's a likelihood of another death happening. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Cook.
Thank you. And Nora, thanks so much for this study. I can't tell you how often I've wondered about Sheridan, and it's really great to see you taking on the hard work of coordinating all that through the entire length. I had a question about a specific location as well, and that is at 52nd. In 52nd, two of the corners are in Denver, one's in Jeffco, one's in Adams. And it's on a steep hill. There's no sidewalk in parts. We've got bus stop there on the west side that floods. It's across from a Brothers redevelopment senior complex and adjacent to two mobile home communities. So there's a lot of foot traffic along here. Did your study have specific recommendations for that corner?
Yes, we did actually. And that was one of the two that we added into our recommendations based on community input. We heard a lot, and there was actually a focus group led by some of our civic advisory members at that. There's a senior home there as well. And so we did have some recommendations. I don't remember at the top of my head, but I know it involved rebuilding definitely in the north west corner, removing the slip lane there, adding a sidewalk. There's actually no sidewalk north of that, and it's kind of where the bus stop is currently. So need to add a sidewalk on that northern corner. And then some other changes too. Happy to share the details with you though, if that'd be helpful to follow up with.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much for that. I'm so happy to hear that. And then, I'm interested in the stretch adjacent to Edgewater too, so I'll look into that from the CDOT side. Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Jones, did you have a question?
I just wanted to hear the response to the public comment that we received, and make sure that that was addressed. I think Brett brought up some of those issues, but I wanted to make sure that we responded to her.
All right, perfect. All right, any other questions or comments for Nora this morning? Thank you, Nora, very much for your time. We look forward to more interactions later on this. All right, next is
Great, thank you.
Next is our Right Alliance Stage 1 report out by Mallory Miller, our Senior Planner for Regional Transportation Planning.
Thank you. I just need a quick second to share my screen. All right, can you all see that okay? Okay. All right, well, I'm excited to share about the Right Alliance project progress from our Smart Stage 1 grant. Also, my name is Mallory. I'm a senior planner here at DRCOG. So just as a quick refresher, Right Alliance is a long-standing goal in the DRCOG region to create a platform that connects demand response transportation providers together to allow for the exchange of trip and client information so that we can better coordinate transportation services in our region for our more vulnerable residents. Right Alliance is currently on its third round of funding, but the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation Stage 1 grant is the first time we've ever been able to test this concept in the DRCOG region. We resumed this project after about a 4-year pause in 2024 when we received that funding because we recognize that there's still a significant need to improve the coordination of transportation services and help eliminate the silos that clients are experiencing. And the reason is, our population is aging by 2030, so less than 4 years away now. 1 in 5 people are going to be over the age of 60 in our state. In 2024, we had almost 12,000 trip denials in the DRCOG region. We did see a slight decrease in that number to over 10,000 in 2025, but it's clear we're still not meeting that need for transit services for older adults and other vulnerable communities. And so that's why we've continued to work towards Right Alliance. So when we applied for this Smart Stage 1 funding, we set out to do the following. We wanted to enhance the Trip Exchange Hub, which is the platform that transportation providers can connect into to exchange trip and client information. We also wanted to make it possible for both clients and transportation provider staff to book trips directly on the trip exchange. We also wanted to test at least one trip type, whether that was paratransit or ambulatory or on demand. We wanted one transportation provider integrated with full functionality. And then we wanted to help streamline and eliminate some of the duplicative reporting requirements that a lot of transportation providers experience. So on the right, there's a kind of a smaller chart that shows like what we're looking to create with the Trip Exchange Hub. Those bubbles for A, B, C, D, and E are all different transportation providers, and it shows how they can connect into this single platform to exchange trip and client information. Something that's a core part of Ride Alliance is something called transactional data specifications. These are data specifications that are specific to demand response transportation providers. And so through the adoption or use of those transactional data specifications, it creates this network of coordination that's sustainable and cost-effective long-term. So this is what the Trip Exchange platform actually looks like. The black boxes are just to block out client names for privacy. But these are actual trips that we tested during our pilot phase. So it's a very clean platform. From providers who participated, we had great feedback from staff that it was very easy to navigate and find the information they were looking for. This is the main screen that provider staff will see when they log in. They have a lot of filtering options available to them on the left, so they can help sort by different providers who submitted the trip, the location where the trip takes place, the funding source, or other eligibility requirements. And on this main page is where they can complete all trip action items, such as claiming trips, canceling trips, marking trips as completed. We also have some great reporting features at the top. And just overall, it's a very clean, useful interface. I know it might be a little bit difficult to see with this screenshot, but just wanted to give you a glimpse of what this looks like. So when we tested the Trip Exchange for the very first time, we wanted to set ourselves up for success. So we operated a 6-week pilot that took place over 30 days total. And we wanted to serve 4 counties. We ended up serving 6, which included Adams, Arapahoe, Boulder, Broomfield, Denver, and Jefferson counties. As mentioned earlier, we wanted one transportation provider integrated with full functionality. We were thrilled that we ended up having 4 providers who were able to participate in the pilot phase. And due to that, we were able to come up with 3 different ways that providers could connect their private scheduling softwares into the Trip Exchange platform. So that included either a direct API connection or middleware, which is basically similar to an API, but if their scheduling software vendor wasn't able to adopt those transactional data specifications, the middleware translated that data before it hit the Trip Exchange so that it was compatible with the Trip Exchange. And then if neither of those worked, we had something we called like the Global Trip Import Tool, also known as like basically just a CSV or Excel file upload, where providers could just input that information and directly upload it to the Trip Exchange. As a bonus, we also had a direct API with Uber, which is great. It looks very similar to what you might see on like your personal cell phone. And so we could directly send trips to Uber, and it's a great way to provide cost-effective trips for those clients who are comfortable using Uber services. We wanted to test one trip type. We ended up testing 3. We had on-demand, wheelchair accessible trips, and ambulatory trips that took place during the pilot. 99% Trip Exchange availability refers to how much downtime the Trip Exchange platform has where staff cannot access the platform to claim trips. So that's about 14 minutes a day where the Trip Exchange would be unavailable. We ended up having no downtime at all, so no staff were impacted or unable to access the platform at any time during the pilot. And then the one goal we came up a little bit short on was we wanted to test 100 one-way trips. We ended up only having 56 trips requested, and of those 56, 36 were completed. The 20 trips that were not completed, these were due to client cancellation. So these were not due to providers not being able to take the trip or providers claiming the trip and then later saying, no, I can't do this. Because we tested this over, winter and during the holidays, it's a common time for clients in the population that was served to cancel trips either due to weather, not feeling well, or just no longer needing the trip. Some other kind of interesting pilot outcomes that we saw. So we had 19 unique clients who participated in this service or in the pilot. Of those, 79% were female. This was just kind of a interesting fact. It's not representative of transportation services in the region. We saw the vast majority of trips that were requested were for medical services, and then we had some for nutritional purposes, and then some personal trips as well. I think the most interesting thing we learned is just how many trips were needed across different counties. This just kind of highlights the need for something like Ride Alliance and coordination between different transportation providers. We don't get our needs met exactly where we live. We need to travel across counties to access those critical medical services or nutrition services. So from our stage one grant, we have a lot of, challenges we encountered throughout that period and a lot of lessons learned. The biggest one is the stage one grant is 18 months long. By the time we got through, all contracting and hiring processes, we only had 12 months to really build the Trip Exchange hub up again and test this pilot with providers. And so we learned, to allow more time for contracting processes, but a huge benefit of future Ride Alliance phases is that we have these contract materials already developed and they'll only require some minor updates for long-term use in the region. We also anticipated that private scheduling software vendors would be opposed, to coordination or the adoption of those transactional data specifications. The reason being is that makes them kind of lose their proprietary competitiveness. A lot of them really want everyone to adopt their same scheduling software, so they kind of create a monopoly in the region. And then they'll offer coordination between different providers for additional costs. So this is kind of goes against like what Ride Alliance is working towards. We want providers to continue using whatever scheduling software works best for them. And so that's why we developed those 3 different methods for integration, whether that was a direct API, middleware, or the CSV upload. So that makes it possible for virtually any transportation provider to participate in Ride Alliance. In terms of not meeting our trip testing goals, so we had collectively agreed with the participating transportation providers that we didn't want to market this pilot just due to the volume of trip denials in the region and a lot of providers managing wait lists. We felt that this wasn't necessary and that we might be overwhelmed with trip requests. And so lesson learned that it probably would have been helpful to provide some marketing materials to clients. So we're working to develop these for future phases, just explaining what Ride Alliance is and that there's trust between our different agencies and help empower clients with information about the different types of transportation services that are participating, like who to contact if they need to cancel a trip or make a change, things like that. The biggest challenge is that, this project was paused for about 4 years, and there's been a lot of changes in the region since the last project iteration. So previously, there was a greater spirit of reciprocity, and we're seeing now that dollars are more limited and they're more reserved for county residents. And so we're working to address some of those challenges and improve coordination in the region in future project phases. Additionally, because we only ended up having 12 months out of that 18-month grant to work on the project, we came in a little under budget. And so we were successful in receiving approval from DOT to extend this contract until June 30th of this year so that we could spend the remainder of our budget and help complete some of the goals we initially identified in our application. We did receive Finance and Budget Committee approval for this on March 4th. So we're hoping to get started with this project extension within the next week or two. So with that, those extra couple of months, we want to coordinate one trip between the North Front Range and PO and DRCOG regions. We didn't have any trips that were available during that very limited pilot period, but we have identified trip options available this spring. And so this will allow us to really see what we need to create this type of transportation service long term between our regions. We also had providers identify some additional trip exchange enhancement requests that they wanted after participating in the pilot phase. So we'll be able to implement those. We're working to also develop an API between the Trip Exchange and Aspire. Aspire is a platform that's used by DRCOG's Area Agency on Aging Transportation Program. Aspire also has a direct API connection with the State Unit on Aging SUDS platform. This is a platform that recipients of Older Americans Act funding through Colorado are required to report into. So by creating this API, we're hoping to meet that initial goal of streamlining reporting requirements for providers. So that trips they submit directly in the Trip Exchange automatically get reported to SUDS and eliminate the need to submit that reporting directly. A big goal we're hoping to achieve, and kind of the main thing, is the direct trip booking interface available for clients. So this is something that we didn't have capacity to build during that 12-month period. So we're hoping to create this this interface for that will be used in future phases so that clients, family caregivers, social workers, medical staff can directly book trips for clients on the Trip Exchange. We also want to continue the work we've been doing with our stakeholders in the region, and then we're looking to explore additional funding to keep this project moving forward. So our goals with the stakeholder work group continuation, we want to share out those contracting items and business rules that we developed during the stage 1 phase so that additional providers can participate in the Trip Exchange in the next cycle. And then we also want to, start working towards those challenges of, increasing coordination and bringing back that spirit of reciprocity. So as, just a refresher, 42 out of those 56 trip requests we received during the pilot were traveling across county lines. So we know that there is a huge demand and gap in the region for meeting those interregional trips. And at the same time, we're also seeing in the region a popularity in microtransit services, which are a fantastic service, but these are generally limited to serving a specific geographic region with predetermined destinations. And so what's great about Ride Alliance is we can help meet that gap by facilitating multi-stop trips and trip sharing between different providers. So some ideas that we're exploring are shared weekly trips to like popular medical destinations, having predetermined meeting or pickup points for clients, also potentially like establishing some set reimbursement rates based off mileage and trip type. So these are just some ideas on the table. We've also broached this topic for interregional trips with our neighboring MPOs, including PPACG and the North Front Range MPO. And as mentioned earlier, we're planning to test trips between DRCOG and North Front Range MPO regions in the next coming months to really determine what else is needed to make that kind of trip exchange successful long term. And then in terms of alternative funding, so the stage 1 grant was originally a 2-stage grant opportunity. Stage 1 grants are designed to really test and pilot your project. And then stage 2 grants were intended to be available to really bring your project to scale in the region, and there was significant more funding available. Unfortunately, the stage 2 grant opportunity was canceled last month. And so that is no longer available, but we've been preparing and exploring for backups before that even happened. So we have applied for the Human Service Transportation Set Aside Funding Opportunity. And then we're also looking into the congressionally directed spending opportunity available this month. And then we'll continue to explore some private funding and other grant opportunities. Additionally, we want to make sure, this stays in line with DRCOG goals and mission and, is sustainable long term in our agency and in the region. So we're adding or incorporating Ride Alliance further into our coordinated transit plan update that's currently going on. We're also looking to add it to the 5310 project management plan update, as well as regional transportation plan and potentially some others as well. And I think that's all I have for you today. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Mallory, very much for this presentation today. Questions or comments for Mallory today? Director Guzman.
Thank you so much. Mallory, great job. I remember walking into the beginning of this project when I started as a director, and to see how far you've gotten and the work that you've done. Just a big kudos to the team. I'm excited to hear you're exploring other funding options, and I'm really, really, really looking forward to seeing how some of those trips interregionally work. Well, I guess between like northern Colorado and central Colorado. That seems like a really ambitious project, but one that's worth trying to figure out. I know right now, my grandmother and grandfather are 98 and 87 respectively. And if I don't drive them, they don't go. And so trying to figure out how to do this for the aging population is really, really important work, because they're still vibrant, wonderful people that want to go explore their Rocky Mountains or see other parts of the state. That's how they brought us up. And so this is just an amazing, amazing job. And so keep up the good work. Don't get down with the funding part. Everybody's facing it, but good for you for also having a backup plan and looking towards the future to try and figure out other ways. So if there's something that any of us can do to help support the project going forward, please let us know. You've got all of our contact information too. We're not just here to listen to updates, but we're here to help. And so I know that that's also something that your team should know. And thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the support and feedback. I appreciate that.
All right, Dr. Clark.
Yeah, I would love to echo Director Guzman's kudos to you, Mallory, and the team for this work. Coming from a housing space, I'm really excited to see this kind of innovation and just trying to help fill gaps in our ability to coordinate options. And so as I was hearing you speak, I was really thinking about the types of housing that housing authorities provide, which is for low-income people who don't have a lot of mobility options, and also a lot of low-income senior housing, and our senior housing is always both folks who are seniors and adults of anyone over 18 with disabilities. And so I was just thinking if there's, it'd be great to understand if there's a way to connect, at scale, some of the fact that we work with thousands of individuals who kind of would really need this type of access, and to connect some of those communities. And there are, of course, housing authorities all over the state who I think would love to understand that this is happening. So if that could be kind of part of the cohorts who are helping to get the word out about this and then help provide some additional information about those needs. We also, as we're building affordable housing, are intentionally not building as much parking because it's just expensive. It makes the overall cost of the housing more expensive, and we are trying to promote not driving to the extent possible. And so, but if we can, marry that with some of these kind of coordinated micro-mobility options, that would be really helpful as well. So I think we could be on the affordable housing side, some great advocates and supporters of efforts like this as well. Thanks.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I think as we're once we find out about funding and that we can keep this moving forward, I'd love to look into expanding our stakeholder group to include DHA. I think that's a great idea.
All right, great question. Any other questions or comments for Mallory today? All right, thank you very much, Mallory, for your presentation. We enjoyed it very much. All right, we'll move on to administrative items. We'll have CDOT go first. Any commissioners want to give updates? Commissioner Cook.
I'll just briefly highlight a couple of items on our agenda this week. One is a continuing workshop to address busting's shortfall in the wake of, we had 3-year pilot funding from Senate Bill 280, and that runs out this year. They've cobbled together enough money to keep it through another year, but we've got to address that somehow. So we're exploring the different alternatives for helping to buttress that program, because it's been overall just hugely successful. I mean, we saw increases, double-digit increases across many of the corridors, the routes that we serve. And so we want to keep that going and even expand it over time. And second thing is, we're going to have a workshop addressing CDOT heightened response, or let's say activity to reduce wildfire fuels in our state rights of way in light of all the drought and winds, et cetera, the heightened conditions that we see with fire this year. So I wanted to highlight that. And then I turn it over to Commissioner Jones and Darius.
I don't know if I have too much to add to that. We are also, I guess the other item is getting a report back on the public comments we received on the 10-year plan. And my understanding is we're moving forward with consideration of plan adoption at our April meeting. So that's something else that I'm sure the DRCOG representatives care about.
I would just add, Madam Chair, that I attended the AASHTO, the American Association of State Transportation Officials, Washington briefing, where they gave an update on potential reauthorization and what folks are thinking. It's very early stages, but they're thinking more formula funding from what we hear from members of Congress at this time, but we'll see a little bit later. I also gave a update to that group on truck parking, and I did give the example of the excellent public-private partnership and local collaboration that happened over in Bennett for the Love's truck parking area that was out there that has 114 parking spaces. So wanted to give national recognition to the excellent job that was done out there.
Thank you very much.
So,
Director Silverstein, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. And my question here is for Commissioner Cook. Your comment about the Mustang service and all. There was recent, I think, from Transportation Commission reports on Mustang and media that followed that highlighted how Mustang is losing money. And is there a strategy at CDOT, and this is for anyone on the commission or at CDOT, to kind of counter that narrative that yes, it's this kind of service doesn't pay for itself, but roads don't pay for themselves either. They're all subsidized. They're all part of our infrastructure. Is there, we deal with this kind of thing at in the air quality front all the time about well, these things don't make money, so they shouldn't be here with us. But of course they should be. So is there a strategy at CDOT or within the Mustang management team on how to characterize this properly?
Oh God, I think that's a really good point, Mike. And if there's not, we can inquire about it tomorrow at the workshop. But if there's not, we've got a really good comms team, and we can support that narrative, or at least countering the narrative that it doesn't pay for itself because it should somehow. And when in fact, even roadways don't pay for themselves, right? I mean, we're constantly scrambling for new money to try to backfill on those because the gas tax isn't sufficient. So I think that's a really good point, and we'll definitely bring it up.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
and if I could add on to that is, if we're taking a look at this and totally agree and on your point and what Commissioner Cook said, but also when we take a look at revenue recovery rate, Mustang is one of the top in the nation in terms of how much revenue recovers in terms of its operation. Does it recover totally all of it on there? No, but nor should it, because it's a service that we provide to the citizens on there. So, but as Commissioner Cook says, that's something that can be brought up by the commissioners at the workshop tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to RTD. I would turn it over to General Manager Johnson to start us off.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Greetings to all. Deborah Johnson, General Manager and CEO. I will start and then yield the floor to our board members that are present. First and foremost, I'd like to share that the board will consider next Tuesday at their board meeting a June 2026 service change package, which is designed to strengthen regional connectivity and support the next phase of the agency's downtown rail reconstruction project that is really laser focused on the state of good repair. And I'd like to acknowledge the Clean Transit Enterprise Grant Program created in Senate Bill 24230. The June service change recommendation includes rail service enhancements such as frequency restorations on the B and G commuter rail lines, the introduction of a temporary service running between Lincoln Station and I-25 and Broadway, which is light rail. We've coined that the T line, T for temporary, that's creative. The reinstatement of the C line from Littleton to Mineral to Denver Union Station, which has received overwhelmingly positive support from respondents to a survey conducted regarding the service change package, and also include service enhancements on a dozen bus routes, as well as service adjustments to increase overarching transit service delivery performance. And these changes respond directly to customer demand and ensure reliable connections and maintain while critical rail work, as I indicated, is underway with one of our oldest rail lines dating back to 1994 in the downtown. The other item I'd like to touch upon is a collaborative effort recognizing the state's first bus rapid transit project, East Colfax BRT. Just last week, RTD Safety Environmental Compliance Team commenced operational testing using a 60-foot articulated bus to evaluate the platform alignment and vehicle clearance and traffic controls. And quite naturally, we here at RTD have worked closely with our project partners to identify potential hazards early and address them before service begins. One of the attributes, quite naturally, of BRT as defined by the Federal Transit Administration is that it's competing with steel-wheeled options and basically moves to and fro just on rubber tires. So with the center boarding platforms, the ease of boarding and alighting is critical, hence my reference to that testing that took place. And more so, speaking of the federal government, the testing aligns with the agency's safety management system practices and the Federal Transit Administration's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Guidelines, which we refer to as the PTAS. And so with level boarding, multi-door access, and ADA compliant gap mitigation tools, BRT along East Colfax will be a convenient, inclusive mobility option. The last thing I'll touch upon before yielding the floor is something that we have been working on collectively, and I take great pride in this, having started this about 4.5 years ago, where we were focused on a laser-like environment where it appeared more welcoming. So as it relates to personal security, that remains top of mind for all of us here at RTD and is critically important when we talk about greater transit utilization and RTD service delivery. So RTD's Transit Police Department has expanded its community presence with 2 new police substations, including one at our Alati light rail facility in Inglewood, which provides officers better access to the southern Denver metro area. And then the second location is at downtown Boulder. And officers will operate out of these substations 7 days a week to augment current patrols using a data-driven community policing model. And staffing these locations improves officer visibility, it reduces response times, and supports a continued sector-based policing model. And the reason I point this out is recognizing that our service area is 2,045 square miles, having our police all deployed out of an area in Rhino doesn't necessarily yield great returns relative to getting out whereby we have vehicles over the metro. So the one thing I will close with is saying that the agency has seen notable decreases in security-related calls and reports of illicit drug activity throughout 2025 and now into the first, nearly 3 months of 2026. And monthly security-related reports decreased roughly by 18% throughout 2025 compared to 2024. And in January 2026, customer reports of drug activity decreased 51% compared to January of 2025. So with that, Madam Chair, I will yield the floor to the members of the RTD board, as well as my colleague, Bill Soroy. And before I do that, I want to acknowledge Bill Soroy's 2 decades plus of service here to the Regional Transportation District. This will be his last meeting as he goes back to my stomping grounds, and I'm super excited for him as he's going to be working on a dynamic project in the San Francisco Bay Area that's been long in the works since the late 90s. And so, Bill, thank you so much for your dedicated leadership and support in this region. So with that, the floor I will yield to other RTD colleagues if they have something to add.
Sure.
Thank you.
Director Becker.
Hi, good morning. Seems a little odd to have a Zoom meeting. At least my dog stopped barking in the back. The only thing I wanted to mention were 2 bills that are of interest to RTD in the state legislature. As far as I know, at this point, the board reform bill has not been introduced, should be probably within the next week or 2. Our board, since we do not know what the contents are, we've been speaking with the sponsor of the bill. We'll be taking a position probably within the next week or 2 weeks. The one bill that is out, transit access, that is House Bill, let's see, 1269. Our board will be taking a position within the week. So I can't really speak to where we're going to stand on this, but I suspect we probably will have some issues to talk about. What this particular bill would do is duplicates quite a bit of the programs that we already serve and provide at RTD. So for example, we already have a low income fare discount program. We already have a program that works with the homeless population. It's called our TAG grant, which is Transit Assistance Grants, which were just distributed this past January to many of our nonprofits across the RTD district. Also, language access initiatives. We already provide most of our information in numerous languages that are prevalent in the Denver RTD district. So those are the 2 bills that we're keeping close eyes on. The state legislature is halfway through their session, and I know they've got a lot of work ahead of them, including their budget bill, which will be coming out sometime next week. So with that, I'll yield the floor to our next director. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
I have nothing to add, but thank you.
Nothing to add, but thank you.
Okay. Congratulations, Bill, and thank you for joining us and being with us for the last couple decades. We appreciate your time and your service, and I wish you all the well to one of my favorite cities in the United States. So thank you, Bill. Would you like to say, you have the floor to say what you want?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, and this is bittersweet for me because I've been in Denver for 30 years, 20 plus years with RTD, but in my previous tenure with the city, I also spent a lot of time with DRCOG. So I've been with DRCOG probably longer than RTD. So this, again, very involved with the various functions at DRCOG. And so again, I've really enjoyed my time and enjoyed, Doug and his team that have been great to work with. And, look forward to bigger and better things in San Jose, which I'm excited to move. And I may be back. We'll see. It's not a permanent probably move, but it'll be for a few years. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll move on to RAC. Director Silverstein.
Thank you, and appreciate it. A bunch of things happening at RAC. We've submitted to one of our state enterprises a request for funding, a large grant application to help fund the emission control strategy evaluation process that we've undertaken at RAC in preparation for trying to achieve compliance with federal ozone standards in our future. So we hope for good luck and good news from that enterprise in a month or two. The RAC has also initiated a health effects uh, study. It's basically to analyze the health burdens and costs of ozone in our region. So we've partnered with premier researchers in our region. We have such great talent and resources in the Denver Metro and North Front Range region with the University of Colorado and Colorado State University Schools of Public Health, premier researchers in this field, and we hope to issue this white paper later this year on what does ozone do to our community if we don't make changes in our future. So that's an exciting study. And we're also implementing our grant programs that have been generously funded by DRCOG through CDOT. And so those are our agency partners here to reduce emissions from our vehicle fleet, finding and repairing high emitting vehicles, funding food truck electrification from those dirty gas generators that we all know and love in our parks and our festivals, funding bicycles going into low income housing and subsidized housing communities so that those are alternative transportation modes from the vehicle. And also outside of the DRCOG funding sphere, also pushing money into the lawn and garden commercial sector to electrify equipment that is used to maintain and care for parks, recreation areas, and our homes. So lots of things happening with our resources at RAC and preparing also for, of course, the next summer ozone season with our education and outreach programs that are expanding into the North Front Range region with new sources of revenue. So lots of activity and great news from RAC.
Thank you very much, Mike, for your report. I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director Rex. He's got some updates for us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair, very much, and good morning, everybody. Just a couple things. So, Jacob had sent out, or someone on staff has sent out a poll, a survey about possibility of changing our meeting times from the third Tuesday of the month in the morning to something where you don't have to get up at the crack of dawn to get downtown. So thank you very much. I mean, we got great response on it, and we're really down to two right now. The first Tuesday of the month from noon to 1:30, and the first Wednesday of the month from noon to 1:30. So what Jacob suggests is that he's gonna get in contact with each of you, just see if there's one of those dates is just a non-starter. So so please be on the lookout for an email or call or text or something from Jacob just to get that. But we're hoping, if not next month, hopefully by May we'll be able to get this going. So we'll give us an opportunity to break bread and get to know each other a little bit better over lunch and also conduct our business. So I think that's a wonderful idea. Also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say a congrats and goodbye to Bill Soroy being his last meeting. Bill's been such a trusted partner for us for so many, many years. And I wish you nothing but the best, my friend. I had coffee with him a couple weeks ago just to talk about his new project, and it is very, very exciting. I'm actually a little jealous. I'm not going with you, Bill, but it sounds like a really, really great opportunity. Are you going to be at the board meeting tomorrow night, Bill?
Yes, I'm planning on it.
Okay, and that's virtual, by the way.
Yes, I know. Thank you for reminding me. I was one of the ones that actually went to DRCOG this morning, so hence why I was a little late joining the meeting. So apologies.
I told him he got his extra steps in this morning, which is great. Well, thank you, Bill, very much. And Madam Chair, that's it for me. Thank you.
Right. Anything else before we adjourn today? Oh, Commissioner Jones.
Could I just ask a quick question of Director Rex? I'm curious whether or not the DRCOG board has been briefed on Proposition 175 and the potential impacts it could have on multimodal transportation and also the state's general fund.
Director Jones, have not yet. Typically what we have done in the past is wait till the language actually was had dropped before the board takes up a position. But I think, going into the summer now, knowing that it has been accepted as a ballot item, it might make sense to begin those conversations for sure. No, I appreciate
My
you
understanding
keeping that on our
is they're
radar.
collecting signatures, so it seems like it would be right. I'm happy to send you some ideas of people that are knowledgeable that could provide that briefing if that would be appropriate.
Please, no, that wouldn't hurt. Yep,
Great,
thank you.
thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this morning. I hope you have a wonderful day. Enjoy the sunshine that's coming through the windows. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you on April 14th. So thank you very much. And this we will adjourn at 9:41. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.